Imagine this. It's a sweltering evening in June 1943, deep in the heart of Texas. A young German soldier, fresh from the deserts of North Africa, presses his face against the window of a luxurious passenger train. What he sees defies everything he's been taught. Miles of farmland bathed in electric light, glowing like stars at midnight. In wartime Germany, blackouts shrouded every city in darkness, and electricity was a rare luxury even in peacetime. But here, in the supposed enemy heartland, a nation propagandized as weak and crumbling, power flows endlessly, illuminating homes, streets, and factories as if war were a distant rumor. How could this be real? What hidden strength allowed America to shine so brightly while battling on two fronts? This single glimpse would spark a chain reaction, unraveling years of indoctrination and revealing truths that no battlefield could teach. Stick around because the story of these German prisoners of war isn't just about captivity, it's about a revelation that reshaped minds and futures. The tale begins in the dusty chaos of Tunisia, May 1943. After months of grueling combat, the Afrika Korps, once the pride of the Wehrmacht, battle-hardened veterans who had pushed Allied forces to the brink, faced utter defeat. General Jürgen von Arnim, stepping in after Rommel's departure, ordered the surrender of over 250,000 Axis troops. Among them were men like Hermann Friedrich Radke, an Iron Cross recipient scarred from campaigns in France and Africa. Captured and disarmed, they expected harsh treatment from their American captors. Instead, they encountered something bewildering: efficiency and order on a scale they'd never witnessed. In makeshift camps near Oran, Algeria, the U.S. Army processed thousands daily with clockwork precision. Photographs for identity cards, thorough medical checks, vaccinations against diseases rampant in the desert, all conducted swiftly by teams speaking fluent German. The Geneva Convention rights were explained clearly, a stark contrast to the brutal prisoner handling many had seen on the Eastern Front. But the real astonishment came at mealtime. For soldiers accustomed to sparse rations of hard bread and watery soup, the American provisions seemed like a dream. Fresh white bread, steaming coffee with real sugar, meat portions twice daily. Oberleutnant Hans Muller later recalled in letters home how his unit devoured meals better than anything they'd had in half a year of warfare. They whispered among themselves, was this a trick to soften them? No, it was standard issue, a testament to supply lines that stretched unbroken across oceans. Then came the voyage aboard Liberty ships, marvels of mass production. These vessels, churned out at an astonishing rate, sometimes one every few days in shipyards like Kaiser's in California, carried the prisoners westward. Built from prefabricated parts sourced nationwide, each ship embodied America's manufacturing prowess. During the 2-week Atlantic crossing, the Germans observed crew routines that boggled the mind. Food waste tossed overboard daily exceeded their old company rations. Sailors casually discarded half-eaten steaks and loaves, not out of malice but abundance. Feldwebel Kurt Zimmermann jotted in his notes how this waste signaled limitless resources, a concept alien to a Reich rationing every scrap. Approaching the American coast, radar systems, thought to be elite technology, spun routinely on cargo decks. Lieutenant Colonel Wilhelm von Thurn, from a storied Prussian lineage, gazed at the horizon and felt doubt creep in. If this was how America equipped mere transport ships, what unimaginable power lay inland? Docking at Norfolk, Virginia, on August 2, 1943, the prisoners' illusions shattered further. The naval base sprawled endlessly, cranes humming with electric power, handling more cargo in hours than German ports managed weekly. Marching to trains, they passed lots crammed with civilian cars, ordinary workers owning vehicles, a fantasy back home where even the Volkswagen promise had yielded few deliveries. Boarding not cattle cars but plush Pullman coaches with cushioned seats, dining services and air conditioning, the men felt like misplaced tourists. Hermann Radke scribbled in his diary, "We entered as defeated foes, yet were seated in comfort unknown even to our officers." As the trains pulled out, rolling through Virginia's illuminated towns, the night revealed more wonders. Every hamlet sparkled with lights, shop signs, home windows, factories pulsing through the dark. This wasn't wartime austerity, it was prosperity unchecked. The guards chatted freely, confirming rural electrification had blanketed America since the 1930s, powering 90% of farms while Germany lagged far behind. Stopping in Roanoke for maintenance, the prisoners watched automated systems refill water and coal in minutes, workers in fine boots sipping Coca-Cola and smoking without ration worries. Gefreiter Heinrich Müller, an engineer from Berlin, estimated the yard's hourly electricity use surpassed his city's daily allotment. The casual extravagance, The fans whirring in empty sheds, lights left blazing, spoke of resources so vast conservation seemed unnecessary. As the journey pressed into Tennessee, massive plants like Alcoa's aluminum works loomed, devouring power equivalent to major German cities, producing materials at rates that dwarfed the Reich's output. These early encounters weren't just sights. They were cracks in a worldview built on superiority. The prisoners began questioning. If America could afford such plenty amid global war, what chance did Germany truly have? The revelations were just beginning, building toward transformations that would echo through history. As the trains carved deeper into America's heartland, the prisoners began to understand something terrifyingly simple. The war they had been fighting was already decided, not by generals or tanks, but by numbers so vast they bordered on the unreal. Every mile revealed another layer of industrial reality that made the Reich's greatest achievements look small and fragile. Crossing into Kentucky and Tennessee, the windows framed scenes that felt like science fiction to men raised under ration cards and coal shortages. The Alcoa aluminum plant along the Tennessee River stretched for 3 unbroken miles, its electric furnaces glowing like miniature suns. One prisoner, a former chemist from IG Farben named Oberleutnant Erich Hoffmann, recognized the scale immediately. He later said the facility consumed more electricity in a single shift than the entire city of Munich used in 24 hours. 4 parallel synthetic rubber plants rose near Louisville, each one newer, larger, and more efficient than anything Germany had ever built. Germany had pioneered synthetic rubber, yet its peak wartime output never exceeded 120,000 tons annually. Here, 4 facilities alone were designed to produce over 800,000 tons a year. The prisoners stared in silence as distillation columns and cracking towers flashed past, realizing their homeland had been out-engineered before the first bomb fell on Berlin. Further north the train slowed near Detroit, and through the windows they caught sight of Ford's Willow Run bomber plant, a single building so enormous it had its own weather system. Built in just 9 months, it rolled out a completed B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes at peak production. One Luftwaffe pilot, Hauptmann Werner Ley, counted 17 bombers in different stages of assembly from his seat. He had been told American aircraft were flimsy, slapped together by unskilled labor. What he saw instead were clean, precise lines, thousands of workers moving in choreographed rhythm, and parts arriving on conveyor belts that never stopped. They weren't just building planes, he wrote later. They were building them faster than we could dream of repairing ours. In St. Louis the train crossed the Mississippi on the Yeats Bridge. Below, grain barges moved in an endless procession, each one carrying more wheat than an average German province harvested in an entire season. Grain elevators lined both banks like silver cathedrals, storing enough to feed cities for months. A Bavarian farmer's son, Unteroffizier Karl Schmidt, watched dock workers loading a single barge with grain that would have fed his entire village for 5 years. He saw a crane operator pause to eat a thick beef sandwich, meat thicker than the weekly ration back home, and felt something crack inside him. Kansas City brought the smell of meatpacking plants miles before the train even stopped. Stockyards stretched horizon to horizon, tens of thousands of cattle waiting under the sun. Gefreiter Paul Fisher watched American workers eating hamburgers during their lunch break, beef, cheese, onions and white bread for pennies. The guard casually bought 20 of them for the prisoners with a single dollar bill. This wasn't a treat, Fisher wrote. This was Tuesday lunch. Every new city, every passing factory, every casual display of abundance drove the same question deeper into their minds. If this is what America does while at war, what happens when it turns its full attention to winning? The psychological ground was shifting beneath them, and the camps waiting in Texas would only accelerate the collapse that had already begun. The most powerful lessons, however, were still ahead, lessons delivered not by weapons, but by daily life inside the very camps designed to hold them. The prison camps themselves became the final classroom, one that no German propaganda could ever discredit. When the first groups reached Camp Hearn in Texas, the men stepped off the trains expecting barbed wire, hunger, and humiliation. Instead they found wooden barracks with electric lights in every room, flush toilets, hot showers, and steam heat that ran even on chilly nights. Each building used more lumber than many German villages had seen in years. The camp hospital stunned the doctors among them. Oberstabsarzt Dr. Friedrich Bauer, former chief surgeon of a light division, walked into a facility equipped with X-ray machines, surgical suites and shelves of medicines, including penicillin, that had been only a rumor in Germany since 1941. American doctors used it freely, even for minor infections among prisoners. Bauer later testified that he treated wounded men with drugs and techniques unavailable to German civilians back home. The mess halls delivered another shock. Walk-in refrigerators hummed with fresh milk, eggs, butter, and vegetables. Gas ranges cooked for thousands at once. Daily rations included meat most prisoners hadn't tasted in years, white bread without sawdust filler, and real coffee. Feldwebel Otto Krebs, once a Munich hotel chef, described watching American cooks prepare 10% extra food simply to guarantee every man received a full portion. Surplus bread, still warm, was thrown away. He wrote that he stood over the garbage bin and cried, not from sadness but from the sheer waste of something so precious. By late 1943, labor programs sent prisoners into the fields and factories. They traveled openly through small towns and farmland, seeing everything. Cotton gins powered by distant hydroelectric dams processed more in an hour than entire German villages could manage in a month. Nebraska sugar beet fields revealed single machines doing the work of 100 men. Farmers spoke casually of 60-bushel wheat yields per acre, double Germany's best land. A 16-year-old boy drove a tractor more valuable than his father's lifetime earnings and laughed when told it wasn't even the newest model. In canneries and steel mills, prisoners watched automated lines that turned out soup cans and rolled steel at rates that made German factories seem medieval. Women, teenagers, and older men ran complex machinery with radios playing in the background. One former Ruhr worker wrote simply, "They produced more in peace than we did with slave labor and 16-hour shifts." Christmas 1943 broke something deeper. Local churches sang carols in German outside the wire. Women baked cookies and cakes by the hundreds. Boy Scouts delivered handmade cards. 500,000 Christmas packages arrived nationwide. Cigarettes, candy, soap, games, for men who had fought against American sons and brothers months earlier. The feast itself was unimaginable. Roast turkey, ham, mashed potatoes, gravy, pies, ice cream. Many ate until they were physically ill, unable to process the idea that enemies would be fed like this. News of Normandy in June 1944 delivered the final blow. Films showed 6,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, supply lines moving 15,000 tons daily across open beaches. Prisoners watched in silence as the scale of American organization became undeniable. By 1945, thousands enrolled in classes: English, American history, democracy, agriculture, mechanics. Camp newspapers debated Germany's future. Fanatical voices grew quiet. Men who once saluted portraits of Hitler now studied constitutional government and free markets. They had arrived certain of German superiority. They left understanding something far more powerful: a society that could produce endlessly, feed its enemies, treat them with dignity, and still win, had already proven the future belonged to freedom, not conquest. And that realization, born in Texas dust and Midwest wheat fields, helped plant the seeds of a new Germany that would rise from ashes not through revenge, but through the lessons learned as prisoners in the arsenal of democracy.